Now that looks like a very full Housatonic river.
Yeah, not like the river now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my screen share, but hopefully you're seeing the cover slide now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And hey, good afternoon, Dan. Dan McGinnis serves on the Housatonic Heritage Trails and Greenways Committee, and he'll talk about the Western New England Greenway today, one of our projects. And actually, Dan was one of the architects of this multi-state bikeway. Let's see. Can you co-host Judith?
Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Jane.
Hi, sorry to be a minute late.
Oh, no worries. All good. So we did have I think more than 30 registrants today, so I imagine a number of people had registered and maybe had conflicts, but we'll hopefully take a moment to view the recording after the meeting. So I guess with that being said, 2 minutes after, out of respect for everybody's time, we'll call the meeting to order. I will introduce myself and turn it over to Jane Wynn, who is Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area, one of 62 national heritage areas in the US now. We were created in 2006, Public Law 109-338, created the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area that serves roughly 1,000 square miles of the Housatonic River watershed. And our mission is to support local organizations in natural resource conservation, historic preservation, and cultural programming. And we do that in a variety of means, including through our oral history center that Judith directs, through our grant program, and through a lot of the programming that we do. We also provide technical assistance, federal grant pass-through, for instance, for the Du Bois Freedom Center in Great Barrington. We act as fiscal sponsor for a number of programs. Um, our, our operative mission is to take a heritage idea and make it a heritage program. And so those are the tools that we use to assist others to to accomplish their goals that are compatible with our goals. So anyway, I'm Dan Bolognani. I'm the executive director and pleased to host this second of two semi-annual public meetings as required by law. And as I mentioned earlier, the recording will be made permanent on our YouTube channel for anybody that missed today's meeting. And so I will turn it over to our current chair of the board, Jane.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you so much for all the amazing work you do. You really are incredible at leading this organization, especially when you're dealing with our federal government and their inability to fund things in a timely manner.
It's a funny world.
Certainly is. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate having you come and see what we're up to. Um, let's see, I think is the next thing I need to do to be introducing the West Side Legends?
I was actually going to do a quick read through of our Board of Trustees, if that works for you, Jane.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, and we've had the great benefit of a lot of expertise on our board over the years, and as people cycle on and off the board, we just represent a broad cross-section of leadership in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, and Litchfield County, Connecticut. Current Board of Trustees reads like this. Catherine Boughton, who is the North Canaan Town Historian. Maureen Dorr with Sharon Historical Society. Mariah Fogg, who's the New England Program Coordinator for the Land Trust Alliance. Leslie Hertzberg, Executive Director of Berkshire County Historical Society at Herman Melville's Arrowhead. Rob Hoogs, who serves on the board of the Monterey Historical Commission and the board of the Bidwell House Museum. Paul Ivory, one of our original board members, serving in an emeritus capacity. Paul also chairs the Great Barrington Historical Commission. Gary Levier, Great Barrington Historical Society. Aaliyah Del Molino, Conservation Director at Green Agers in South Egremont. Paul O'Brien, President of the Sheffield Historical Society. Craig Langlois, who is in charge of equity of learning for Pittsfield Public Schools. And of course, our esteemed chair, Jane Wynn, who's Executive Director of the Berkshire Environmental Action Team. So a wonderful board, and I feel the joy of their support every day.
Thank you, Dan. And it looks like next, running through some of the major programs that you're in charge of.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick rundown here. And some of these are legacy programs. For instance, we started with the Iron Heritage Trail, which was the impetus for the federal legislation to create the heritage area. The idea being that many of the stories that are told in our area extend beyond municipal or county lines and sometimes even beyond state lines. And the iron heritage of the region was one of those stories. And so our Iron Heritage Trail is one of our legacy programs. The African American Heritage Trail, the Upper Housatonic Valley, is another one of the legacy programs. These two programs are coming up on 25 years old at this point. The Native American Heritage Trail, working closely with the Stockbridge Muncie Community Band of Mohicans. The Housatonic Heritage Oral History Center at Berkshire Community College, which is a wonderful partnership that is headed up by Judith Monachina. The Du Bois National Historic Site Program that seeks to bring together all of the community-based organizations that interpret Du Bois in and around Great Barrington. The Heritage Trails and Greenways Committee that, among other things, has spawned local bike routes and a multi-state bikeway called the Western New England Greenway, and you'll hear more about that. Operation Pollination, which is a national program spearheaded by the National Park Service and Rotary International, among others. And Vivian Orlowski is our Operation Pollination Coordinator. You'll hear more about that momentarily. Our annual Heritage Walks weekends, which just concluded, and we're still tallying the attendance, but by all accounts, it was a great season for Heritage Walks because the weather was so good. Not to mention the variety of walks is usually really, really good too. And that was our 22nd year of doing Heritage Walks, so very pleased with that. As I had mentioned earlier, some of the things that we do is supporting other organizations through our grant program, through direct technical assistance, and through fiscal sponsorship. And so I hope that you'll visit our website to learn more about those programs.
Thank you, Dan. It's amazing how many different things that the heritage area actually does and spawns so much other great work. It
Yeah.
looks like the next piece up is to hear about Pittsfield's West Side Community Housing Program from Tony Jackson and Marvin Purry.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Upper Heritage for always being involved with us. We started out basically as a physical sponsor for us for our first grant. So they've been with us through this whole ride. So we appreciate the partnership from Dan and Jane. You know, you guys are special to us. So I'll just give you some of the beginning history, and then Marvin can talk about the current project and where we're at. So we started revitalizing the West Side by doing events, and then we started getting involved with housing. And then we have, I believe, 37 people from the Greylock program that have closed on houses last year for a total of almost 42 people and over $8 million. So the plan we have is incredible. But also with that, you also find other things. So the housing that they were able to afford in the neighborhood and throughout Pittsfield was old stock and really needed some work. And it took additional money for them to get it right. So we decided that we would start looking for new housing and new housing opportunities. But those come with challenges because they're very expensive. And to bring something to our neighborhood, which in over 40 years that I can remember has not seen any new housing developments. We've seen housing developments for rentals, but not for home ownership. So we decided to tackle this project, and with help from the state of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth Builder, we're able to get significant grants to lower the pricing of this housing. And now we believe we have something that's going to be the starship of the West Side. So with that information, I'm going to switch it over to Marvin. He can give you the details about legacy townhomes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well. Again, to echo Tony's sentiment, we do thank Upper Heritage for their involvement in us, and you know they're one of our key posts in what we're doing. So, with that behind us, initially, as Tony mentioned, the housing stock was quite old. So first, we started to sit there and say, you know what, let's rehab a couple homes. So now we're sitting here, we see the struggles that these homeowners are going through. So we decided to take a leap and say, we approached Second Congregational Church in Pittsfield, Mass, on Onoda Street, and we approached them in purchasing the empty lot behind their church. We told them about our vision of our 16-unit townhome project here that we call Project Legacy that you see on the screen. And they were more than happy to sell the land to us. And things just started to fall in place. As Tony mentioned, Cambridge Housing Authority, Mass Housing, City of Pittsfield, Greylock Federal Credit Union, Upper Heritage has all jumped in here and said, hey, let us give you guys a hand to bring this together. What you see on the screen right there is our vision. Basic 16 unit townhomes where, you know what, it's going to be different than any other project, affordable housing project that has ever been in the city. Our approach is, instead of people renting, we want to try to create equity through wealth. And the way that we can do that is through this project. It's on a little less than an acre of land. If the average young family comes into this housing right before their kids start kindergarten and they go straight through high school, they should be able to have enough money in equity to send their kids to college or whatever they need to do. So with that being said, we look forward, we thank you, and we look forward to putting housing like this. We have a master plan that we can display, we can send at a further time. And we're just looking to revitalize the West Side and give people a chance that we had when we were growing up. So we appreciate the time, and we thank you guys again for your input and your contribution.
Yeah, excellent. And in case, Tony and Marvin, you guys are you're the renaissance of the long history of redlining and discrimination and the blight that was rained upon Pittsfield's West Side neighborhoods. And to see the work that you're doing now to resurrect the housing stock in that part of town. It's amazing how creative you guys have gotten in the approach that you've taken to all of this. And we're pleased to be a small part of that. You guys are doing the heavy lift, obviously, and so we're just pleased to be playing a supporting role. Yeah. And really appreciate it. I know you're both probably on your lunch break trying to squeeze in a quick presentation to us. I truly appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us.
Congratulations, and congratulations on that article in the Eagle recently. That was it was great. Great to
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Judith. I mean, thanks, Dan. It really captivates what we're trying to do and all the different partners that helped out. And we wouldn't be where we are without partnerships and people that care. So we thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Truly appreciated. Judith, you're up next. We manage this amazing program. Judith manages this amazing program in partnership with Berkshire Community College. And take it away, Judith.
So I decided that I would just take you to our site and sort of show you just a couple of programs, a couple of projects that we're working on right now, rather than a little slide or slides or anything. We're just going to go to our projects page. And I'd like to talk about a couple projects that are in the works or near the end, because we have a lot of projects that are sort of either at the beginning or they've been going for a long time and we're in the middle. I'm just focusing on 3 projects today that are vital, active right now. One of them is we decided a while ago that we would, about a year ago, that we would focus on people and their work, and we would try to encourage others through small, very modest grants, but small grants, to do projects that relate to people in the Berkshires and Litchfield County, Northwest Connecticut and the Berkshires, and their work, what they do for a living. What sort of keeps the county and the counties going? What's our economic base? What do people actually do? And we wanted to focus on people who do sort of behind the scenes, maybe more with their hands and more and basically behind the scenes. So we talked to a couple of people about it. And so now there are 2 projects that are active. One that's almost finished, and that's work in the working forest. That's a project in which Mary O'Neill, you see there on your screen, has interviewed 5 people who work in the Great Mountain Forest of Northwest Connecticut. It's a 6,000 acre working forest with all kinds of scientists and other people who work it. It's several generations now of forest, managed forest, research forest. She's done 5 oral histories and 5 podcasts, and she's just about to upload everything to the Connecticut Digital Archive, and also to our podcast hosting, Buzzsprout, and it'll go out on the directories. And I'll definitely send word out. It's about to happen in the next couple of weeks, but she's finished that project. So very happy about this project. It's a gem. We also, as part of that work theme, we've partnered with the Community Television of Southern Berkshires, for the Southern Berkshires, to create a series of a show and a series called Talking Shop, in which we're interviewing people about their work. And we've interviewed 2. We're just working on the branding right now. We want to get some in the can before they go up and out, but they will also be archived. So far we've done, like I mentioned, we wanted to get some sort of hands-on work. We'd like to get some tradespeople. We have someone managing a theater person who manages the whole Berkshire Community College theater. So she basically runs from lights to sound to this. We have a person who's a piano technician. That was amazing. A young woman who can take apart a piano, put it back together again. And so right now we're looking for 10 people, and we should finish that within the next 10 months. We're trying to do 1 a month on that. And Manos, which the Sheffield farmers, I'll mention, that grew out of the 4-town oral history inventory project that we had. At one of the towns that we were doing an inventory of was Sheffield, and at the time, the Sheffield Land Trust asked us if we could also include voices from the Fields project that they had done years ago. It's a legacy project, and it was sitting in tapes. It was sitting in a box of tapes. So right now we've given them a small grant, and they have someone who's digital copying the tapes. We're halfway done with those tapes, and they will be the same thing. This will go to the Digital Commonwealth. Sheffield Land Trust will have them on their website as well. They're creating a page so that people can go right to their page. They'll also link to the Digital Commonwealth. So we're excited about that one. That one's about halfway done. And then finally, the newest project we have is Manos Unidas, which is a nonprofit in Pittsfield that we are the humanities advisor. The Mass Humanities Grant requires a humanities advisor. We're the humanities advisor on this project. They will do 15. We've just started with the interview training on this one. 15 interviews of people who have emigrated from Central and South America. It's our first bilingual project. These will all be done, these interviews will all be done in Spanish, and there will be an exhibit, an in-person exhibit at the end of this. And of course, they'll also be archived in the Digital Commonwealth. So that's really it for today. I don't want to run you through everything, but these are the ones that are sort of top of mind right now. But always take a look. We try to keep the projects page updated. And so that's where we are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Judith. And I think Tony or Marvin had dropped a chat note in there to learn more about the work they're doing in the West Side neighborhoods of Pittsfield.
Right.
West Side Legends is the westsidelegends.org is the website. And Judith's work, you'll find all of this at the oralhistorycenter.org. And Judith, in her work with, on the campus of BCC in Pittsfield, provides a lot of technical assistance to local organizations who are seeking advice about either starting or finishing or working through their oral history projects. So very robust program. And thank you so much, Judith, for all that you do.
You're welcome. And we're also working with students. I didn't mention any of that, but we have some podcasting projects with students, which is fun. Yeah.
Next up is the Western New England Greenway, and that's a project we've sort of shepherded for quite some time now. Dan McGinnis is the architect of one of the core pieces of the Trails and Greenways committee, which is called the Western New England Greenway. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. The Connecticut Bike Committee has had a pretty good year. A major focus has been continued to be the Western New England Greenway. And thanks to the persistence of Tom O'Brien and funding from the Heritage area, all the towns in Connecticut have now installed WNEG signs along the way. These signs provide turn-by-turn directions and are located at the intersections. If you've been down the northwest corner, you've probably seen some. If you've ever done any bike touring, you can really appreciate how comforting it is to see one of these signs to let you know, yeah, I am really on the right path. The signs also serve to alert the drivers that there be cyclists along the way. On your screen now is a picture of Tom O'Brien, who has a lot of persistence, thank God, and the signs that you'll see. The WNEG also received some really good publicity thanks to Terry Burke, another bike committee member, and Ella, a 23-year-old Australian who was interning in Falls Village. She contacted Dan Bolignani about questions about the WNEG route, and Terry responded and answered her questions. And then he put her in touch with other folks who we know along the way to help her find lodging. She was planning to ride from Falls Village to Montreal. Terry also wound up loaning her his wife's bike because her bike wasn't very good. So in return, Ella sent us a number of posts, complete with photos on her ride. We put them on the WNEG site, as well as the Northwest Corner Chatter, another Facebook page. And the response has been really overwhelmingly positive. The bike committee is also working on creating a bike-friendly business directory. It'll be a list of bike-friendly businesses like hotels, restaurants, and bike shops that welcome cyclists. We have established sort of minimum criteria that a business must meet. For example, a hotel would have to have a covered, safe place to store the bikes overnight. Floor pumps, really appreciated when you're traveling. A few simple tools and some information about the Western New England Greenway. This is going slower than we had hoped, but it is moving and we'll continue to work on it. After some discussion, another thing is that after some discussion, the bike committee has proposed to Connecticut DOT a realignment of two small sections of the Western New England Greenway in Connecticut. To make the realignment official, we have got to go through a number of hoops. Connecticut DOT actually has to be do the paperwork and send it on to what's called AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That will make sure that it's an official, continues as part of we are an official U.S. bicycle route, and that's the procedure you have to go through once you want to realign something. Unfortunately, the Connecticut DOT continues to ignore us, but we'll keep after them and hopefully get it done within the next year. In November, the bike committee will be meeting with our partners from Massachusetts and Vermont at our annual conference in Burlington, Vermont, and it's a good opportunity for us to meet the other folks in person and sort of make plans for the next year. We also did something else to promote the Western New England Greenway and bicycling in the Northwest Corner. We worked with Bike Walk Connecticut, a statewide advocacy group, to sponsor the bike ride in Connecticut's Northwest Corner. There were routes of 12, 22, 40, and 75-mile rides, as well as a short walk. We did this in 2019, had plans for doing it in 2020, and everybody knows what happened in 2020. The ride was held on September 8th. We had 65 participants, and some of the rides were held on roads that are part of the Western New England Greenway, which is always a nice reinforcement for things. In conclusion, I'd like to thank the board for all the support you've given to the bike committee over the years, and we hope to continue to make some more progress. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. And the project just in general, the Trails and Greenways Committee started originally to promote safe bicycling, safe trails, walking, bicycling trails, promoting healthy outdoor activity. And then we had, quickly realized, thanks in large part to Dan McGinnis and the other members of the committee, that there are so many other people just like us working on projects to the north and south of us. And that's when the idea dawned on this committee to start to weave together, I think it's 11 or 12 different organizations that really make up the Western New England Greenway. It's the bikeway. It begins in Norwalk, Connecticut, and terminates at the Canadian border. So, it's a mammoth project across 3 states. Takes a lot of logistical gravitas, I guess, to continue coordinating with all these different entities, and then municipalities and county governments and state agencies like DOTs to try and get this work done. But I think Dan started when he was a teenager, and now look at him. He's
Seems like it.
getting it done. Anyway, so yeah, and you saw he had mentioned an intern. You saw a photo of her. I think it was the first one up, and she had seen the Western New England Greenway signs in Falls Village, sent an inquiry here to the office, and I sent it over to Dan and Terry and some of the other bike committee members. Next thing you know, this young person who is not a road cyclist said, "Yep, I'm going to ride to Montreal." And she did.
She did. Yeah, she did real well.
Yeah, anyway, thank you, Dan. Appreciate the update. Next up, so Operation Pollination. We have been working with our partners at the National Park Service and a whole host of other organizations on pollinator protections. And Vivian is our Operation Pollination Coordinator. Take it away, Vivian.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity to share highlights about Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination. Next slide, please. Let's start with the founding National Operation Pollination Framework, provided since 2018. Our Housatonic Heritage Pollinator Program is one of about 100 Operation Pollination ambassadors, and now we have global representation of this movement. Our recent initiatives that we participated in include, next slide, please. We helped organize an OPA, Operation Pollination Ambassadors meeting, about working the night shift, pollinators after dark, with pollinator conservation biologist Emily May from the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. Emily's presentation merits further outreach in our region, and we're fortunate that in July, Berkshire Environmental Action Team's Green Drinks offered, quote, "A Darkness at Night, Essential for Life," presented by Smith College astronomy professor James Lowenthal. Emily stressed the pollinators more, but he talked about the general framework and especially what action we need to take to control lighting at night to help people and pollinators. Next slide, please. Operation Pollination is helping to create a presentation and application for the Earthshot Prize 2025. The Earthshot Prize, founded by Prince William in 2020, quote, "searches the globe for game-changing innovations that will help repair our planet." And they are awarding the best 5 solutions in the world each year 1 million British pounds, and to scale their work, to budget the scaling up of their work. Next slide, please. The application supported by Operation Pollination and Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination is, quote, "stewardship by 150 indigenous communities to enable saving monarch butterfly 3,000-mile migration by restoring vital habitat and mobilizing intergenerational ecological education," end quote. Next slide, please. It has tribal leadership by the Wyandot Nation of Kansas and is supported by leading non-governmental organizations such as the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, SRAG, and many others. Do we go to the next slide now? I think so. Yes. Yes, moving more to the state level, from the international and national activities, Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination has recently focused on Massachusetts initiatives, and we continue our support and partnership with the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, MAPN, on pollinator and biodiversity outreach activities. Housatonic Heritage has served on a MAPN panel recently to inform citizen pollinator groups about pollinator-friendly Operation Pollination activities, not just by us in the Housatonic Heritage National Heritage Area, but in 4 other National Heritage areas in Massachusetts. So next slide, please. Just quickly to go through them. The Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor. Next slide, please. The Essex National Heritage Area. Next slide, please. Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. Next slide, please. And the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor, which if you go to the next slide, along with a lot of other projects that many of the national heritage areas are engaged with in Operation Pollination, they have come up with an interesting approach that might be of interest to many of our board members with historical emphasis. They are combining historical sites with pollinator gardens. And making a historic, wherever possible, documenting the historical connection, but in any case, making it something different than the standard green lawn approach that is not friendly to pollinators. Next slide, please. Of course, we also included the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area in that presentation. Next slide, please. On the state level, with the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, we explored possibilities of cooperation with a meeting with the new pollinator specialist at the University of Massachusetts Amherst Center for Agriculture, Food, and the Environment. They now have a pollinator specialist, which is just new as of this year. Next slide, please. Another state connection that we made was submitting our vision for nature in 2050 as part of the biodiversity goals for the Commonwealth that is being operated by the Department of Fish and Game as part of the Executive and Energy and Environmental Affairs. And we had to trim down the importance of pollinators for our vision for nature in 2050 down to a little bit about 500 words, packed full of a lot of the activities that I've just discussed now, and we'll continue to discuss in this presentation. Next slide, please. Part of our work on nature connected pollinators to trees, which is something that is not always as obvious. Often the focus is on pollinator-friendly gardens and even bee lawns as a local, both for residents and for businesses and schools. But trees are part of the natural world where there's such a dependent on pollinators and vice versa. Next slide, please. This is certainly emphasized when we look at our indigenous traditions. The Boston Globe recently featured an article on tribes have long studied how to preserve our most vulnerable ecosystems, and researchers in Massachusetts are listening. I think the listening is fairly recent, and we're trying to promote the fact that it includes the connection with pollinators. For example, some of the trees that are often targeted for logging are beautiful old oak trees, which are very valuable, but they're also very important for pollinator development, especially caterpillars for many of the butterflies that we value and need in our ecosystem. Next slide, please. State and regional protection for our forests includes advocacy by the Massachusetts Sierra Club, which we recently connected with in terms of the pollinator forest connection. And next slide, please. The grassroots advocacy that's being generated to protect state and regional forests. Housatonic Heritage is sharing mutual benefits of pollinators with trees. And this is a group called Trees as a Public Good, which is a grassroots group that's working throughout the state, including in Western Massachusetts, and with a focus on current issues about logging in forests in North Adams and in Lee, Massachusetts, in October Mountain State Forest. Next slide, please. Focusing on the regional level, as I reported at our last public meeting, Housatonic Heritage has been involved with the BCC and the Conway School's effort, which was summarized in a living laboratory on the learning landscape of Berkshire Community College. And in being in touch with BCC, we've learned that they are already implementing key points from this ecological design plan, and we look forward to learning more about their continued plans. Next slide, please. One of the plans that we have suggested and they're interested in considering for the future is workforce development and environmental justice in order to help train the people who many residents and businesses and schools and companies throughout our region depend upon for their land care. And it's important for them to get the kind of education that BCC students are now receiving as part of their involvement in this project. Next slide, please. One example of workforce development that's not being headed by BCC, but by Greenagers was, for example, in Egremont, helping Greenagers team helping install a pollinator pathway in Egremont. It was beneficial for the town of Egremont, where these were all volunteers, and it was beneficial for the Greenagers team to learn about pollinator planting in an effective way. Next slide, please. Concerning BCC, there's another connection that Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination has had over the recent years, and that's with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, OLLI. And OLLI, along with the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, and us, have developed a collaborative plan for an event with Professor Christiane Hines. And it's going to be titled The Ecosystem Where You Live, Local Land Stewardship and Biodiversity. And it's based on an article that she wrote last year called A Letter to America, a Rewilding, and talking about her experience as an African American and her relationship with the land based on many social, environmental justice issues. And it's a fascinating article, and we're looking forward to her talk in early 2025. Next slide, please. This topic that Christiane Hines is going to talk about from interracial and environmental justice perspective is also becoming of common interest. Just recently, the New York Times had a major article, Can You Get Rid of Your Front Lawn Without Offending the Neighbors? It was written by Margaret Roach, who writes columns for In the Garden in the New York Times. And that's available now, a few weeks ago. And we'll end with that as a topic that we will continue to promote and encourage interest with our partners and with the public here in Housatonic Heritage area. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vivian. In case you haven't guessed, Vivian is truly immersed in Operation Pollination. And it's another example of how, Housatonic Heritage, we try and work at, the hyper local to the regional, to the national, to the international level, wherever it makes sense, whether we're working in, downtown Pittsfield or working at the national level, so thank you so much, Vivian. Truly appreciated for pushing the envelope on so many fronts and gathering so many partners. So keep up the good work there. And Tessa, thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, one of the tools that Housatonic Heritage uses to, propagate really good heritage programming is fiscal sponsorship. And Tessa has been doing this amazing program for so long now. Take it away, Tessa.
Tessa, I think you're still muted.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks,
All
Jane.
good.
Okay, I think you all heard from the West Side Legends at the beginning of this call about the housing work that's happening in the West Side and really transforming that neighborhood. And that's a project that I am also involved with. And the reason I mention that is that over the past year and in the year to come, we have been engaging students in the Pittsfield Public Schools with some of this thinking around urban design and urban history as it relates to looking at the history of the West Side and where and how new amenities can be added. And the mastheads, which is largely an architecture and literary program, we've kind of been figuring out ways that the students in the Pittsfield Public Schools can follow along with real-time projects that are happening in Pittsfield, how they can learn about and engage with professionals that are working on those projects, and how they themselves can actually, through the building of architectural models and the writing of poetry, how they can participate in actual changes that are happening in the space that they live in. So this selection of images here, this is middle school students and high school students from Eagle Academy, which is located in the former Eagle building right on North Street, right off of North Street behind Paul Rich and Sons. This is a school for middle and high school students who have been taken out of the typical Pittsfield public school system because principals have deemed them to be difficult to manage. So they've all been kind of placed into this one school, and we decided to work with this specific population of students. And Sarah Trudgeon, who is my co-director of the mastheads, has been working with these students since their elementary school days. So we have this relationship that we formed this past year with Eagle Academy. They're an interesting population of students because they are drawn from all across the city, but they come to downtown Pittsfield every day to go to school. So they are the students who spend their time in downtown Pittsfield. So we have been looking to them as sort of the youth experts of downtown Pittsfield. And this is showing last winter, we had an exhibition at the Lichtenstein Center with a series of models showing how the West Side and downtown Pittsfield became disconnected from each other by urban renewal in the 1960s and 70s. So we brought the Eagle Academy kids to the Lichtenstein Center. We taught them about this history, and then we introduced them to the process of using architecture and thinking about space and the experience of public space to ask them what things they felt were missing from downtown, or what were the challenges they faced when they walked from their home to school in downtown Pittsfield. And as you can see from these very engaged photographs, the students really responded to having their input and ideas respected, B, being kind of introduced to the idea that changes in our cities happen because individual people come up with ideas and get other people on board with those ideas, and that's how the good ideas and the bad ideas change our cities. For instance, urban renewal taking place in the 60s and 70s, that was an idea that someone came up with that they thought cities needed to modernize in a certain way. So really kind of helping them understand their role as citizens of Pittsfield, as people that can also then shape the future of Pittsfield. So then their work became, they built these models and they each wrote excerpts about what they built and what they thought should happen in downtown Pittsfield. And then their work was placed on these pedestals throughout the exhibition. And then that was a public opening at the end of the month. And this fall, the mastheads is going to continue to engage Pittsfield Public School students with another real project that's going on at the top of Francis Ave, so overlooking the Big Y and overlooking the urban renewal area. Habitat for Humanity and the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission are trying to convert a small pocket of green space at the top of Francis Ave, where people currently walk down a very broken up stair to get to the Big Y, trying to convert that into a nice public space with seating, and to take advantage of the amazing vista of Pittsfield, which I don't know if all of you have experienced, but there's really an amazing view of downtown Pittsfield from the top of Francis Ave. So also then trying to build upon that idea to think about how a lot of that unused and underutilized spaces around the very high speed roads that went in during urban renewal, how can those spaces become spaces that pedestrians can engage with and spaces for pollinators and native plants? So really trying to reimagine this part of Pittsfield. And we're working with Conti students this fall. And we're hoping to actually have them participate in visiting the site, writing about whether they themselves use this space, or if they're seeing it for the first time, what their perspective is on the city of Pittsfield from that location. And then we plan to, actually, Tony, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking maybe we can invite some of the Conti students to come read their poems at the Halloween block party. If we can have them do these writing exercises before the end of the month. But what we really try to do with the Mastheads Poetry in Schools program is engage students through the writing of poetry with projects that actually are shaping the place that they live and the place that they call home. And then also inviting them to read and share that work in public venues. So not only inside the classroom, but to invite them to events or to exhibit their work in public places as a way of telling them that their ideas are important and that the community at large wants to hear what they have to say. So that is what we are up to right now, really trying to merge the mastheads and writing and thinking about architecture in the current moment in Pittsfield, and really trying to uplift Pittsfield kids in the act of doing so.
Well, spectacular, as usual, Tessa, very inspired. I'm really, really happy that Housatonic Heritage can play a small supporting role in, yeah, it just, yeah, I'm inspired every time I hear from you.
Housatonic Heritage has been really pivotal in this whole program being able to function, because Sarah and I, who run the mastheads together, we both are raising families and have full-time jobs and really don't have the bandwidth to turn the mastheads itself into its own 501c3 and have a board and figure out all of the paperwork ourselves. So the fact that Housatonic Heritage can support with that sort of back of house work, so that Sarah and I can really focus on maximizing the time and energy we have to be out in the community, working with kids, working on projects. I don't think we could really truly be doing this without Housatonic Heritage. So really, really a sincere thank you. I think it's been something like almost 10 years now that we've had this relationship in place. So thank you all so much for continuing to support us.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you, Tessa. Thank you, heartfelt thanks, Tony and Marvin, for presenting on West Side, Tessa for the mastheads and all the amazing work that you're doing there, Vivian and Judith, who are part of the Housatonic Heritage team, Dan McGinnis, part of our Trails and Greenways Committee, to my amazing board of trustees under the leadership of Jane. Thank you so much. I feel the love every day and the support that you give me to push these programs forward. So thank you. And thanks for taking time out of your lunch hour to join today's meeting. As I mentioned, we'll post the recording for anybody that missed it, or if you want to watch the highlights again, it'll be on our YouTube channel.
And
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Jane.
All right, my pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye now.